Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 work session. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Lewis Witherspoon if he'd lead us in the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, thanking you for another day, thanking you for the blessings that you've given us individually and for the blessings that you've bestowed upon Harnett County and the citizens of Harnett County. Lord, we ask that you be with us today as we go about conducting business. May everything that we do be pleasing in your sight. These things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. All right. First order of business is a discussion to suspending the issuance of building permits in the Rawls Church area until certain safety concerns are addressed. I asked that to be put on. We continued a couple of times, waiting to see different data from different folks at this time. Anybody got any opinions, anything they want to discuss? Do we have any representatives from the Department of Transportation? You come to the podium and be identified, please, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lee Jernigan. I'm from DOT Division 6. I'm Deputy Division Engineer, so we're glad to be here this morning and be open to any questions or any conversation we'd like to have regarding that area. We as well are concerned about the safety and congestion there, so we're working to try and see what we can get improved. So like I say, open to any questions or comments you may have, and I have my staff here. Several of my staff members this morning, so again, we're open to any questions you have.
First off, I'd like to thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Resolve this issue. Put the floor to whoever.
I have a question. Anyone else don't have a question? I have a question on what you all are going to do about the traffic on Rouse Church Road. Rouse Church Road, as well as what's the name of the street? To the left.
Piney Grove.
Piney Grove. Wilbur Piney Grove Road.
Yes, ma'am. So you're talking Piney Grove at Rawls Church?
Yes.
Where
yes.
the new development's coming in?
Yeah, that Piney Grove Road is terrible. It's really bad.
Yes, ma'am. We understand the traffic is pretty congested, and it's getting worse with the development that's coming. I know at a high level, and I'll ask one of my staff members to step up in a moment and speak specifically about what we have scheduled there, but we are working with a developer to get some improvements at that intersection. And Richie, would you mind stepping up and explaining exactly what we're working with a developer to implement? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Richie Hines. He's our district engineer that covers Harnett and Cumberland County. So Richie, if you would, please.
Sure. Good morning. The improvements that are going to be made as a result of the Serenity development are phased. The developers bringing about 1,200 lots or so. Several years ago, when they first approached it with us, they did a traffic and impact study. We analyzed the study, and then when we issued the driveway permit, we allowed them to phase in their improvements. So as they bring more lots to the area, the improvements are commensurate with it. The first improvements are going to be a signal project at 401 and Rawls Church Road to help mitigate some of the impact that their development is causing there. They initially did they widened Piney Grove Rawls Road itself there in the front of their entrance. So that was kind of their first phase. The second phase is a signal at Rawls Church Road, 401. When they get to about the 500th lot, it's either 500th or 515th lot that they record, they have to do improvements at Piney Grove Rawls Road and 401 itself. They have to add a left turn lane and a right turn lane on Piney Grove Rawls, as well as a right turn lane on 401 for Piney Grove Rawls Road. We've already had some preliminary meetings with them, reviewing their design, so they're already working on that. But again, it's required when they record lot number 500 or so.
Have you looked at, on that Pine Grove Road, I'm so familiar with the road, 'cause my mother used to live on the road. It's a D curve after you come into the intersection, about half a mile down. It used to be a yielding sign there. One time it was a stop sign, then they put a yield sign. They have nothing there in that D curve. And I need you to look at that if you can, because in that curve, you can't see other cars coming from the opposite direction.
And you say that's on Piney Grove Rawls Road, about a half mile from 401?
Yeah, gotta go Ross
Okay.
Road. It's a deep curve, you'll see it. Used to be a caution sign there, but there's no caution sign there.
Okay. I'll be glad to look at that.
Please do, because you can't see cars coming from the opposite direction on that road.
Okay.
Realistically, if I understand what you're saying here, Serenity's got to build out halfway before they're required to put up their part for the signalization.
That's correct. At Piney Grove Rawls and 401. That's correct.
But that doesn't include Rawls Church.
That's right. The department actually has a project there already that we're working on. The developer contributed to that project.
Mr. Weatherspoon got a letter from somebody in Yellow that led us to believe that it had been funded, but it would more likely be June of '24 before any construction began. Is that accurate?
That is, I think, fairly
I
accurate.
realize we're talking ballpark here. but
Yes,
that-
sir.
That kind of what we're looking.
Yeah, Commissioner Weatherspoon, I think Mr. Cox, Drew Cox, forwarded that letter. He has since taken a position in Raleigh, so that's why we had a pleasure to be here today. Yeah, the funding is there, which is a major hurdle, as we all know. So that's good news. Scheduling wise, we're looking at some challenges from some utility adjustments and a little piece of right of way that would take some time. Once we get those issues mitigated, hopefully we can expedite it a little faster than the dates that we were provided. But at that period, we were being conservative. We also, another thing that we don't think a lot about is the signal is proposed to have metal poles for their supports. Those are about 6 to 8 months once they're ordered before they're actually delivered. So that the right of way to utilities and the poles, those things can kind of run concurrently, but still, it's those are the time frame challenges we're up against. We want to install it as quick as we can as well. So if there's any kind of temporary signalization or something like that, we can look at it in the interim. We are open to that, but I can't stand here and commit to that today. But again, we're looking to try and deliver it as quick as we can.
When you say temporary signalization, talking about like a four-way stop.
Well, we would most likely be a traffic signal. We would just construct it, would say wooden poles in a temporary fashion. If we don't normally like to do that because we end up building it twice. So we would prefer to just install the permanent stuff at once. But again, that's an option that's on the table that we could look at.
When I was talking with Mr. Cox on Friday, he brought up about the possibility of a temporary signal. My understanding was that it's already being looked at and considered. What would be the timing on something like that?
Again, the challenge we're going to have is there's some communication lines. There's utilities that run along that church side that are going to have to be adjusted, likely regardless of whether we do a traffic signal in a permanent configuration or a temporary configuration. So a lot of times, if you can avoid stuff like that, the temporary pattern would be quicker. But if you got to adjust those to some degree, we're at the mercy of the utility company to get that done. Again, the funding's there to do it. It's just a matter of timing. But we are, Mr. Weatherspoon, looking to see if that's a possibility. And I can't commit to it today, but we're going to do what we can to make sure we get it in as quick as possible.
Who do the utilities belong to?
I'm pretty sure it's Duke Power
Okay.
is the owner of the pole, but there are some communication lines that are along there as well. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not certain if that's what communication company that's with. We could certainly determine that, but I don't have that today.
Well, I certainly think that you need a traffic light there between Piney Grove and Rouse Church Road, but that area. Are you aware at 3 o'clock in the evening, until probably about 6 or more, coming down that road or even going up that road, is very difficult. I've heard citizens say they can't make a right turn or a left turn. You know, people traveling coming in from work. It's really awful. So you telling me that you all are thinking about a traffic light there? It certainly needs to be one there.
Yes, ma'am. We have a project to do that. I just, again, we're still working on the timing, but yes, ma'am, we will have.
What kind of timing are you talking about?
I think the original timing that we provided through Mr. Cox was March of 25. Now, I know that is,
That's another
going to
year
raise
out.
some eyebrows, but again, at that particular time, not knowing how long it'll take us to settle the right of way and utilities was why we came up with that number. We certainly hope and expect to deliver it far in advance of that. Like I said, one of the major hurdles that we have is funding, and that's there. So we've overcome that, and a lot of times that's what we're looking for. But fortunately, in this case, that's been overcome. So, you know, we have funding in place. We're actively working with the utility companies, and we'll be contacting the church for some right-of-way negotiations, and all that going smooth. We hope we can deliver it far in advance of that. Again, there's still going to be some time to order materials and coordinate with the utilities and you know, the property owner. We just need that one parcel, a little corner, enough room to put the pole in for the church. So hopefully that process will go smooth and not take all that long.
Well, I appreciate everything y'all done on this, but let me explain to you the dilemma that we're facing.
Certainly.
We have a community that is not happy with this situation at all. We've had 83 wrecks in 20 months at those two intersections. So we don't know what else to do. That's why we're looking to you to give us an answer. You know, if it's putting up temporary traffic control, then so be it. I know it's an inconvenience, but sooner or later, we're gonna have somebody get killed over there. You know, the numbers are just too high for the amount of wrecks, and I understand the dilemma you're facing, but, so I'm all ears. Y'all have a
Yes, sir.
suggestion of how we can fix this and with a little quicker response? Board would be happy to hear it. If not, then we're gonna have to look at doing something else.
Yes, sir. We hear you. Again, I know the time frames I'm giving you is not the most ideal, but we want to have something there as well.
Sure.
And we believe the traffic signal is the way to go. It's going to take us a little time, and we will certainly keep communication open with your board to let you know where we stand and if we run into any issues and if there's any way we can collaborate to address those, we certainly would seek that help as well.
Just for point of clarification, I mentioned the four-way stop law. Was there any reason not to do it up there?
Well, the main issue is the traffic volume on 401.
Right.
And the department generally installs all-way stops, four-way stops, three-way stops, whatever, based on guidelines that are consistent around the state. And one of those is traffic volumes. And when traffic volumes get to a high enough level and they're off balance on one approach, say, as another, on your main line or your side street, that all-way stops tend not to work that well because you're stopping a whole lot of traffic when there's never anybody or there's not a lot of times when it's on the side street. Folks tend to disregard those. Again, that's not to say it's impossible, but just standing here in front of you today, that would be the comment I would make, that generally the traffic volumes on 401 are a little bit too high to look at that. But again, we can make sure we've turned over every leaf in regard to that and look at it again.
Well, I want to say I appreciate you coming and spending some time trying to explain what you are dealing with as far as putting a traffic light or whatever up there. But please take under consideration that a lot of citizens live on that road.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of houses being built in that area. So you're gonna see more people traveling up and down that road. So you need to take that under consideration because that's going to impact people's lives and safety. So I want to say thank you very much for coming and explaining it to us, and I hope that there is some kind of way that you can move forward a little faster than what you're moving forward.
Yes, ma'am. I certainly hope there is too.
Thank you.
And if I may, I would just like to say, I know you have what you look at as far as traffic volumes are concerned. But I also look at time it's going to take before we get that intersection signalized. I really wish you would go back and reconsider putting a four-way stop in there. At least slow that traffic down some that's cresting that hill when they, on 401. I just think that would help some with what we've been seeing there and what we're hearing from the community as far as their concerns with that intersection. But there again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know the details, and it may create more problems than it would solve. But I wish you would go back and take another look at it and see if it might help
Yes, sir. Absolutely, we can.
revisit that.
I have been a traffic engineer in the past, and I have two of my staff members here. They're hearing you. That's why I asked them to come today so they could hear the same concerns that I do, and we can make sure we've, again, looked at them all as closely as possible.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
How long, if you went back and looked at this again, how long do you think it would take it
On the,
four-way stop?
we could probably look at it again and get you something back this week.
That'd be good.
And as always, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'll say as always, if there's any other questions or, I mean, our phones, our email is open every day. So it's not just that we have to come and stand in front of you. If there's any other questions or any other information you would need, feel free to get it to us, and we'll certainly look at it and get you some comments back.
Well, if you could respond to that as quickly as possible about the four-way stops, so we can, we meet every week, so if we could have it by next week, we could discuss it amongst ourselves.
Absolutely.
Figure out
And
where to go from
we'll also, if there's any movement in any of those other areas I mentioned, such as coordination with the utility company or contact with the property owner for right-of-way or status of our designs for the traffic signal or any of that, we can actively provide you updates on where we stand, just so you're not sitting here with no updates to provide your constituents. So we can give you what we know. Absolutely.
In the interest of trying to work through this, I want to set this over to our next work session.
You're fine.
Next week is a voting meeting, so it's something that we can bring up as a motion. We
Yeah,
want to put
that's
it
true.
on as a separate
We'll
item
put it
next
on
week
as
for
a separate line
discussion.
item for next week, and then we can continue it or take action on it, either one.
Our next meeting, I believe, is the 18th.
Correct.
Okay, so would that be sufficient
Everybody
time in
good with
order
that?
to get us an
Yeah,
answer
it's
back?
18th.
The 18th, just
By
in regards to evaluation for always stop there.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir. We
That give you enough time?
yeah. I'm looking for some head nods. So yeah. Yes, I certainly think we can provide you an update on that.
All right,
And I just want to add this, keep in mind that traffic is heavy on the weekend as well as it is through the week.
Yes, ma'am.
On the weekend, I think it's even worse. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you.
all right, there's no objection. Madam Clerk, put that on for a separate line item for next. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gentlemen. All right, item number 3, discuss discuss request for approval of the selection of the Greer Group part-time temporary staffing agency to provide payroll services during the election season.
Thank you. Good morning. We are back before you again this morning. The HR department is requesting or recommending the Board of Commissioners to select the Greer Group as a part-time temporary staffing agency to provide payroll services for our seasonal election workers for the county. The staffing agency would assume responsibility for onboarding and payroll. This would also minimize the county's exposure as it relates to workers' compensation claims and other employment-related claims. As you remember, at the end of last summer, we put out an RFP and we received those bids back. And the HR department selected the Greer Group, and their markup was 23.6%. The staffing agency selected currently works with other Board of County elections, so they have experience in this area. This new process would not affect the appointment process for judges, recruitment process for election workers, nor would it affect the assigned location for each election worker. And as I know there were concerns the last time, I was able, and this should be included in your packet, a sample contract. So I reached out to the Greer Group to address some of the concerns from last time, and I worked with our legal department, and they added language that we felt that would make everyone more comfortable with moving forward with this. So on page 1 of that contract, under identification of part-time temporary staff, we had our legal department to add that wording there. And then in turn, I sent this contract back to the Greer Group, and she was okay with us amending their contract and moving forward. So, so I feel that we've hopefully included the language that would make everyone feel more comfortable with moving forward. And again, this new process really does not affect the Board of Elections department. It's more so for Human Resources and our finance office. Is that administrative burden of onboarding and the internal control processes for our finance department. So do you have any questions?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hasn't this been brought to us one time before?
Yes.
What's
This
different
is,
about it now?
this is the third time. Yes.
What is it what is different about it now?
The difference is this time, so I talked with our county manager after the last meeting, and I was encouraged to re-present this again with a contract that you guys could read through and see if it included the language that gave you all the comfort level that we were looking for the election workers, just for onboarding and payroll purposes.
Let me ask you another question. This contract is gonna cost, it's costly. How much would it cost to hire extra people in your department to do this work?
How much would it cost to?
Have you analyzed how much it would cost to hire extra people to do this work? Simply because previous HR managers in the department have done this. What is the difference now? I guess, no, let me step back. Maybe it's the increase of population.
Yes, it is that, and the increase of the onboarding and the packets, and definitely it's an internal control issue for finance. And I don't know, Kimberly, if you want to chime in. For human resources, yes, I could add extra staff, and I did put that in our budget request, and I didn't get that, so that's okay. But we've been still working through that. So again, it's that increased traffic, because sometimes we'll have 15 or 20 people in our HR department. If you've been in our lobby, it's very tiny, and they're in there completing packets to be added to Tyler. So, and it's a lot of traffic moving in and out. But more so, it's more of that, the employment-related claims, so the workers' comp, or situations where someone has claimed that they've been discriminated against because of a disability. Because once we've onboarded them under our system and Tyler, they come to us for if they step off the curb and crack their knee open, or they hurt their back, or if they're in a car accident, going to some of the senior assisted living centers to get those individuals to vote. So it's a lot of those employment-related claims as well, not so much as just staffing, if that makes sense. And then I'll let Kimberly, if you want to speak on the finance.
So, Commissioner McCoy, some of the issues that we're looking to resolve and alleviate some of the additional work that's required by county staff involve several departments. Basically, Human Resources would screen those applicants, hire those applicants just as they always have. But at that point, the payment of those individuals, it puts additional work on Claire's department, because she does not have the staff, because they have to verify that those individuals work that time. They have to do those timesheets and then turn them in. And then finance has the process of paying, which sounds very simple. But in reality, over the last several years, what we have found is that the information that has been reported back for pay purposes has not been correct, because it's very difficult for Claire and her staff to monitor and oversee these individuals during the election event to make sure that they are working the hours that they have reported that they have. Then when it comes to payroll, they are not giving us updated information, so their funds, when they are paid, go direct deposit, but they're bouncing back, or the checks are being returned, or they say that they're not getting their money because the information that they're giving us as far as their mailing address or their bank information is not always accurate. Then when it comes to processing W-2s, these individuals, when you get from election and then you do your W-2 several months later, some of those are being returned. So there's a lot of issues where it's a lot of stop and start. So one of the, trying to resolve a lot of these internal control issues and exposure for liability for the county. That's why we had looked to see if this was a viable option. And again, HR will do the hiring, they will screen those applicants, but as far as the payroll process of it, that would not be handled by finance or the HR paperwork as far as if you were to specifically work for the county. And it's just the payment side of it. But the county would still have control of the selection, who we hire as if they were county employees, but they wouldn't be. But we would contract with Greer to do those administrative type, because if not, it does create an additional, especially for elections. They do not have the staff to be able to hate to use the word chase, but to keep up with those individuals on election day. And
But
that's that
I'm
real
concerned
difference.
about how much difference would it be to hire the staff here to do it rather than contracting it out?
Yeah, so based on the fiscal year last year, the figures that Claire gave me, with the markup, with her invoice, it was going to cost an additional $33,000, and I don't feel that we'd be able to add staff for that amount when you add in their benefits, their insurance, their leave and such. We would not be able to get a person for $33,000.
Have you analyzed?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I'm not against it, per se against it. All I'm against is sending our work being contracted out. It should be here in this county. And this next election is going to be a very important election, just like all the elections that we had. And I want to make sure that all our checks and blanks are covered. So I'm only one vote up here. That's my concern.
Okay.
And then as far as the work and all, like I said, the only way that I can see it being necessary is that the population has really grown here.
Yes,
We have a lot more people.
we do.
So if it wasn't for that, I would say, hey, our management and the Human Resource Department and Kimberly's department have been able to do this for many, many, many years. So you have explained the change and the difference that it would make. So I'm just one vote.
Any other questions, comments?
So you feel confident this is the best option to go with?
Yes, and we have involved multiple departments, from the county manager's office to our legal department. We've involved Claire, IT, and finance. So it's not something that we haphazardly put together. And in fact, I believe the county has talked about this for years, putting in place. And then I guess we didn't have someone that did the investigation and come up with the quotes and stuff. And so I was charged with that. So we've wanted to put this in place for several years now.
And this is part-time, temporary staff.
Yes, and that's in the contract. Yeah. Okay, yeah, because Colleen wanted to point out that it would be only for Harnett County residents as by the law.
And this is part-time, temporary staff around election time, is that?
Yes, it would be for early voting
Right.
and election day. So it's for those two purposes.
it wouldn't necessarily be conducive to hiring permanent staff when we're talking about a small window of time.
No, sir.
And it's also across multiple departments. I think that's a lot of the issue. I mean, we are looking at the need potentially as we're approaching 1,000 employees to add to the staffing in HR. And that is something that we're going to probably look at in this budget cycle. But this situation involves basically the use of staff time from 3 departments. So hiring one person in HR doesn't solve the issues that are occurring in the other departments. And so for us, this was the next step. Now, in the future, we may need to look at bringing this back internally. If we grow staff in another area, we may say this contract's no longer needed based on the additional staff that's available to handle the issue. So I think, especially as we enter into this primary and general election, the number of staff that we're going to have at these elections is going to be significant. And so this is an opportunity for us to allow staff to continue to focus on the areas that we want them to, rather than dealing with temporary workers that work anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 days. And so for us, this is an opportunity to be more efficient with our staff's time and have them focused on the areas that we want them to be focused on.
Now, if we decide this is not working, we're not obligated for any length of time, we can get out of it.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Yeah, so if at any point in time we say this was a terrible idea, it didn't work, we tried, we can absolutely pull that back and cancel the contract. Yes.
Well, if you explain it that way, it's a possibility we may review it at some point. May consider it, but I think any work that we have here in Harnett County should be given to our citizens, not hiring outside staff. That's my problem, because we have so few jobs here in this county. And I do know election time is a time for a lot of our citizens to really get involved and earn extra money.
Absolutely, yes.
And I don't want to take that away from them.
You have something?
Just to clarify, Commissioner, we're not taking that away from our citizens. Only citizens of Harnett County can have this job.
Okay.
We are not taking that away from anyone. It's the
All
same
right,
exact same exact pool that we would use if we were doing this internally.
Okay.
It has to be Harnett County residents. So we're not taking anything away from our citizens.
But now I'm glad you explained that, because that's been my concern all the time. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, after hearing staff's recommendations, say that we approve this and put it on the consent agenda for next week.
Okay?
I'm good with that.
I agree.
Madam Clerk, if you'll add it on the consent agenda for next week. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about discuss the acceptance of the grassroots grant.
Good morning. I am here today to ask for your approval to accept the Grassroots Arts Program grant. This grant is offered from the North Carolina Arts Council for the fiscal year 2024. And we have received $90,966 in state funding and $66,275 in ARPA federal funding to support arts organizations and arts program through Harnett County. So we have received 10 applications for the state funding and 7 applications for the ARPA funding, and we will be subgranting this money to organizations.
What's the pleasure of the board? Have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I move that we put this on the consent agenda for approval.
Barbara?
Yeah,
Okay. Madam Clerk, add that to consent agenda, please.
Thank you.
ma'am. Okay. Discuss a request for permission to accept an award of $500,000 from the North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust. Flamer.
Good morning. So yes, I'm here to request permission to accept a $500,000 award from the North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund, ADFP, which is a division and program of the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. This will help us to secure a perpetual conservation easement on 330 acres of working forest land in northwest Harnett County, bordering both Hector's Creek and the Cape Fear River. So we are very excited about this particular opportunity and the natural resources conservation impacts that it will have for generations to come, lying where it does within the county.
Where is this land?
This particular parcel is off of Christian Light Road. As you turn on Christian Light Road, it's about, a mile and a half on the left as you go down into the hills. across the river, not directly across, but maybe one parcel north, is actually Raven Rock State Park. And so, of course, Raven Rock offers a wonderful buffer for the water quality in the Cape Fear River. And so, having a parcel with a conservation easement on it within such close proximity on the opposite side of the river really is a great benefit for our water quality in that high quality watershed area.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see this added, or the acceptance of this funding added to the consent agenda for our next meeting.
Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, we'll add that on for the consent agenda for next week. Thank you, Ms. Lambert.
Thank you.
Discuss a request for approval to enter into a great grant 2023 three-way agreement between North Carolina Department of IT, Broadband Infrastructure Office, Connect Holding LLC, which is doing business as Brightspeed, and Harnett County. Mr. Hall?
That was a mouthful. Good morning. These are the fun ones. I enjoy coming up and asking for these. So, the state broadband has informed us, Harnett County, that we can move forward with the Great Grant Award with Brightspeed. There may be some pauses yet, just to put that up front because of the ongoing litigation around the Great Grant and Cloudwise. But right now, things are moving forward with Brightspeed. Cloudwise is aware of this, and the state has reached out to us and told us to move forward. So I am requesting approval for this agreement between the three of us, the state, us, and Brightspeed. The highlights of this great grant are pretty awesome, actually. It's going to reach over 4,700 locations. And I'm going to take over a second, Jamie, and look at this map right fast. So just for everybody in the audience and everybody that watches on the live stream or can review it later, and for all the commissioners if they want to look at it, if you go out to nc1map.gov and you scroll down through the page, there's a nice broadband section right here. It's on down about halfway down the page, and it'll take you to the NC1 map. And on this page for broadband, it'll take you to the NC1 map for broadband. There's a map here, and you can filter it down by the county, and it'll show you all the nice, pretty yellow dots that are currently awarded in this great grant for ARPA round in 2023. And you can actually click on these dots and see the addresses. No other information. It's basically the address of what's going on there. And all the yellow dots here are the ones that this great grant is going to touch, which is pretty exciting. It's pretty good coverage. It's hitting a lot of areas that are dead spots right now for broadband. And as you can see, there's still some spots over here. This is actually a windstream area, so I think that's the biggest reason Brightspeed didn't break into that over here in the western part of the county. We're still hoping, the way it looks, there's a potential that we could get a second great grant, not the CAB grant, which is still coming down the road, but there is a potential that we could get a second great grant, and that may cover some of that area. But until we hear more from the state and how this all falls out, that's kind of there. But I just want to let everybody know that there's an easy way to look up to see that this affects your address location or this area of your county. So just take a look at that when you get bored and want to see yellow dots on a map. The other thing around this great grant, the 4,700 locations, the county is putting in from the ARP funding that we received $375,000, which is the required match to get the max of all the great grant process mess. So we'll, as a county, put in $375,000 of ARP funds. The state's putting in around $4 million of their piece, and then Brightspeed's a little over $6 million for this particular project. So it's a sizable project. It's going to break $10 million. And with that, I'm just requesting approval to enter in this with this agreement between us three. And if you have any other questions or comments.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I think we should put it on the agenda.
Move to approve, put it on the consent agenda.
All right, Madam Clerk, put it on the consent agenda for next week, please.
Awesome.
Thank you, Myra.
Thank you.
All right. Larry Smith discussed a request for approval of accepting the North Carolina Emergency Management Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant, $10,000.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, this grant is a non-cost share grant, and we use this to conduct hazardous materials exercises throughout the year. This past year, we did a series of 2 exercises where we worked with the responders on a train derailment exercise, and then back in October, we brought in county and municipal leaders to discuss that very exercise and what their role would be in that exercise. And it's traditionally what we use those fundings for. And again, there is no cost share for that grant. Open to any questions?
Pleasure of the board.
Put it on the consent agenda.
Madam Clerk, if you will, put it on the consent agenda for
Thank you.
next week. Thank you, sir. All righty, discuss a request for approval to move forward with the HVAC control software update. Mr. Snipes.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We came here I'd like to ask to move forward with approval to move forward with Johnson Controls to replace the HVAC controls in our 5 buildings, which is CCCC, which is Health Science, the Government Complex, DSS, Health Department, and the Courthouse and Tax and Deeds. These systems are about 25 to 30 years old, and they're constantly giving us problems. They're crashing, stuff like that. The total amount bid was for $466,588 for Johnson Controls, and we just wanted to see if we can move forward with this. We do have money for this that's coming out on capital reserve already, so.
And
Do we have, this Johnson Controls, are they standard across all of our buildings, or are we
Yes, sir.
headed in that direction? So
Yes,
this
sir.
would be consistent with what you're working with?
Yes, sir. We have 3 buildings already that's got this system in it, which is Harnett Regional Water, the Sheriff's Department, and the Ag Center. So this would just go into that.
So I'm
completion.
assuming this would allow your folks to sit in their office and see what's going on in each of those buildings without having to get in the truck and drive out there?
Yes, sir. We do have that system now on some of them, and we got, I think it's 4 different systems.
Right.
So this is kind of bringing
Creates
stuff
a
more.
problem, yep.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Now, was this budgeted for this year, or is this gonna be a budget amendment, Mr. Manager?
I remember, was the funding this year or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We
Trying to
have
remember, because
paid for it.
we have a couple of projects similar to this, and I wasn't sure if this one was one that we had to move up or if it was already budgeted.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
If it's budgeted, that's.
We have the funding. It's
We've
sitting
been
in the reserve fund.
Working on this for about 3 to 4 years in the process to move it to get to this system, to get the systems in.
Okay, good enough.
Yes, sir.
recommend putting it on the consent agenda for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Good with that.
Okay, Barbara, Lou? Okay. All right, Madam Secretary, if you would, please. Madam Clerk, sorry. All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, discuss and request an update to the bank signature card.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners of the Board. What you have before you is an update to the county's check signature card. We are required to have 2 signatures on our checks when we pay for services or goods. And due to the reorganization of the board and the chairman, we will have to approve that the change to from Commissioner Nickel to Commissioner Morris.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we put this on the consent agenda for approval.
I agree. All right. Madam Clerk, if you would take care of that for next consent agenda, please. And discuss a request to approve school resource officers agreements with the following local
Missed one,
governments:
Chair.
Town of Angier, Town of Coates, Town of Dunn, Town of Irwin.
Item 11, Mr. Chairman.
You missed number 11, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Discuss reimbursement policy.
Signing those big checks kind of messed you up, didn't it?
Do what? I'm sorry.
I said signing those big checks.
Yeah.
What's that misnumber?
Okay.
Don't reimburse through the policy, you don't have to pay out.
Okay, so what you have before you is a fee reimbursement policy. It's a draft of something that we have kind of talked about over the last several months. And before the start of the meeting, I placed at each of your stations just a bullet talking point of the highlights of this policy and what I'm going to kind of talk about today. And I apologize that my numbering was number 10. It's now number 11. There was a revision that I failed to update my cover sheet But anyway, we, over the past several weeks, months, entities, citizens, all sorts of groups, when they pay fees for goods or services for Harnett County, have requested reimbursements and/or waivers to not pay before the action is taken. And so because we are starting to get a lot more of those requests, we thought that due to the size of the county and the way the county's trying to move forward, that it would be in our best interest to have a written policy. So we've kind of gone out, looked around. There's not really, it's kind of no rhyme or reason to how other units do it. So what I would like to propose to you is a reimbursement policy. This is the first draft, so I'm requesting your input. It is very, very concise, and I think that's needed to maintain the clarity of the document. But first and foremost, the Harnett County Board of Commissioners sets these fees each year as part of the budget approval and part of its budget ordinance. So in doing so, I wanted to make sure in this policy that we stated that the Board of Commissioners is the governing body of Harnett County. Therefore, they set the fees, and they are the only ones who can modify those fees, whether it be a change in the cost, whether that fee itself is refunded or removed completely, or what it covers. And that's done, like I said, that's done each year during your ordinance. Some of the other units that we looked at address each department individually, and because we have a lot of departments, I felt like it would probably be best if we referenced back to the board's document that they approve each year. Then that way, the board only has to update the fee schedule during the budget ordinance, and then that document stands. And then that way, each year, if there is a change to the fee schedule, we're not having to update other policies, and it keeps keeps it consistent, and it creates a standard. So what I did want to do is, and you'll see that listed on the page under purpose, it actually lists all of those departments. So for example, if a citizen, was looking for a reimbursement, they could go to this and automatically see, okay, animal services is one of them, and then they would be referred back over to the list of fees, and we place that website in there so they can click and it'll take them over. The second section that we're looking at, again, under authority, that is the one where we set that the board does have that control, and we reference that statute, so just, to educate our public. And then number 3, the one that we have really looked at, is that I am recommending as the finance officer that the board consider a reimbursement policy, so that they require everyone who needs that good or service or permit or whatever it would be, that they pay that fee up front and follow the standard procedures. And what that will allow us to do is that will allow us to collect that activity in that department. And so if we are looking at comparing, as you compare your fees, your activity, and you're looking at the growth of the county in certain areas, and I'm talking about whether it be for water and sewer services, whether it be for inspections, permits, anything that Larry's department does, you can see the true activity of that department. So when that entity pays that fee, they would have 30 days to file a reimbursement, and there is a stated procedure to do that. We have developed a reimbursement form so that it collects all of the data that we would need. They would be required within 30 days, if they're going to request a reimbursement, to fill out the form, attach proof of payment, and then explain why they are requesting a reimbursement, present that to the clerk of the board, and then the clerk would put it on the next work session for the board's discussion. And then if the board so inclined to reimburse that fee, then that fee would be paid from a separate expenditure line that is in the governing body's budget. So that way, it does not impact that department at all. It, shows that true activity. But then we have any reimbursements that the board makes are contained in one location. So if we ever want to see a trend analysis to go back and see, how those are going, all of that activity is contained in one department in one line. And so we'll be able to collect that. And I think it would be a lot easier for the board to be able to see that information. So as you're trying to make decisions on economic development, on, land use plans, that type of thing, you've got that correct information with those departments. Because we rely on those department reports and those statistics quite a bit. And even though, one or two here or there may not be a huge impact, I think one or two could set the tone. So I would like to propose that the policy be done like that. So I'm requesting feedback from you. If this is, like I said, this is just the first draft that we've put before you.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should put it on that, Chairman.
Good. All right. Madam Clerk, you'll put it on the consent agenda for next week.
Thank you.
Now we go to item number 12. Talk about those school resource officers for the town of Irwin, town of Coates, town of Dunn, town of Irwin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll cover this one. Back budget time, there was a discussion related to new agreements related to SROs for the towns and the city of Dunn. The last agreements were done in 2018, and those agreements were completed, and the 5-year term that those were in place for had expired. So we needed a renewal. I had a misunderstanding as it relates to whose responsibility it was for that contract related to the school, the county, and the towns. So we did not get it completed prior to the end of the fiscal year. So what we're doing now is bringing these with updates to the board for consideration. It will change the reimbursement rate that each town receives to match their current costs to provide that officer in the school as an SRO. It does not pay for any equipment or car, which was in the original agreement. This only covers salary expenses and the benefits that relate to that officer. The way it works is the towns are paid, and then a reimbursement is sent. They pay for the expense, and then a reimbursement is sent back to them. We get a bill from the school, and we pay that bill, and it helps to show our expenses as it relates to the support of the school system here in Harnett County. The agreements are set to be effective July 1st. That will ensure that the total amount of expense for the fiscal year for that officer will be covered. The agreement also provides for a 3% increase in the amount that they receive each year. It's hard to know exactly what they'll give, so we just kind of picked a number of 3% that would increase. It may not cover the full expense. Say that an officer, they give their staff 4%, there'll be a little bit of a shortfall, but at least recover the majority of it. So I'll stand for any questions.
Does it cover benefits?
Excuse me?
Does it cover the benefits too?
Yes, it covers the expense of the benefits for the officer.
Okay.
Pleasure of the board. Questions?
Recommended be put on the
I think we put it on the consent agenda.
Madam Clerk, if you'll put it on the consent agenda, please.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 13, discuss a request to accept 2 tracts of land located in the southwest side of Harnett County, close to Highway 87.
Mr. Chairman, we have the opportunity that we can receive as a county some land in the west side of the county. An individual owner has requested that he would like to donate this land to the county. There are 2 parcels, 181 acre parcel and a portion of a 668 acre parcel. We would receive 260 acres of that parcel. The owner and his attorneys have been in touch with County Attorney Snow, and they're working through the documents that are necessary in order for us to accept that, including a survey that will need to be completed on this, the larger parcel. The other part is they were discussing this with the county. I asked that they complete a phase 1 environmental study. I never like to accept land without knowing that it's been checked out to ensure that we're not accepting a problem later on. That phase 1 was completed for these parcels, and no issues were determined to be there. The distance from any potential contaminant source is quite a ways, and so that the report was basically a clean bill of health for us to accept this land without having any contamination issues.
And there are no restrictions on the use of the land, is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner Weatherspoon, there are no conditions. They stated that whatever way we would like to use that property, we could.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
We put this on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, usually consent agenda I think would be good, but in this case not, because we have not even received the surveys yet. we're in a time crunch. They definitely want to vote on it this year so they can take advantage tax-wise. I would say it should be a separate line item to be discussed. You haven't seen the surveys yet.
All right.
I was talking to their attorney yesterday. They anticipate the surveys will be ready and recorded this Friday. That's a big if. So.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you would list that as a separate line item for this, please. All righty. Anything else? If not, item number 14, review of applications to serve on boards and committees. And it looks like we've got one from the Mid-Carolina Aging Advisory Committee. Mrs. Vicki Walden. And my understanding from staff is that this is not a district sensitive, but an age sensitive, requirement on it.
I believe this is a reappointment as well, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, looks like it. So what is the pleasure of the board?
So we add Ms. Vicki Whalen to the consent agenda for approval for Mid-Carolina Aging Advisory Council.
Okay.
I know Vicky, she's.
Okay. Madam Clerk, Bill, consent agenda for next week. The manager's report.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of items. I wanted to make sure the board was aware you will be contacted in the near future by Rebecca Jackson. She is the consultant that we've hired to assist us with our strategic planning retreat that will be conducted by the board on January 23rd. Given it's been a couple of years, she wants to reach out individually and check and see with you, are there any items that you are seeing based on the strategic plan and other changes that have occurred that you might be interested in seeing. And then, of course, the whole board will be getting together for that retreat. Staff met yesterday, and we have worked through some processes to identify some additional key strategic actions that we believe should be included, and we'll bring those forward on that day to also show you, but basically trying to mirror the items that staff's identified and the items that the board is interested in seeing. Second item I have is to make you aware that a zoning case that the board heard recently where there was a motion and no second related to a piece of property that was 401 in Rawls Church Road. Based on attorneys' information, we have to take action on that item. It cannot just die for a lack of second. We either have to approve or deny that application because it is a zoning case. So the item will be placed on the agenda next week based on a request of the owner. And so that item will be a separate item on the agenda for the December 18th meeting. There's already been the public hearing, so it'll just basically be a decision time. If there's any additional information related to that, it does obviously relate to some of the discussions that were held today related to that intersection. So, but this item will be back on the agenda for a decision by the board. That's all I have, Chairman.
All righty. Any questions for the manager on anything? Hearing none, is there a call for a closed session, Mr. Counselor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11A 3 and 4, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with the county's legal counsel in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege concerning the handling of certain claims and to discuss certain economic development matters.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Not, we'll go into closed session.
Need to vote on it.
Take a vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? from closed session, a motion to go back into open session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and
Second.
properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?